Day. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Of course, we are going to talk about the election because that is the most important thing today. But I do want to bring you, we will get up to date on a little bit of what's happening around the sports world, especially as it relates to what's happening in the Houston area. We care about around the globe, but we care about what's happening here in Houston. So since the last time we were together on last week, we were talking about Chris Gardner joined me of the Houston Round Ball Review, and we were talking about the Houston Rockets coaching search and where it stood last week. And we talked about Stephen Silas. I keep calling him Paul. That's his dad's name. And we talked about John Lucas, and we talked about Jeff Van Gundy. And one of the things Chris says is that Stephen Silas was kind of probably a happy medium for what this Rockets team could get right now. At any rate, it is official. The Houston Rockets have hired Stephen Silas. He is the team's next head coach. And so we haven't had a chance to meet him here locally yet. But, Steve Silas comes from a rich tradition of basketball history. He comes to Houston from the Dallas Mavericks, where he'd been for a couple of years. Prior to that, he was in Charlotte. He's worked for Don Nelson. His father is Paul Silas. So he grew up in this basketball space. So I'm not real concerned about his basketball IQ, and he's known for what he does offensively. We're still waiting to see what this Rockets team, I think that one of the questions and one of the things that I'm keeping my eyes on is what the Rockets plan to do in terms of improving from last season, right? They don't have many options in terms of what they can do with this roster. No draft picks, salary cap strapped. And so the roster is built for a small ball type, game plan, if you will. So let's see what they do. Will they stick with that and just hope that they can be better with those pieces and do better when they get to the playoffs because they've got new energy, they have a new coach? What is the plan moving forward? So as soon as we get that, I will bring that to you and we will talk about it. But Stephen Silas, not a bad choice. I mean, I like Steve Silas. I think he will be good for the organization. I mean, I'm just waiting to see what this team, I keep saying who they're going to be when they grow up. Like, what is this Houston Rockets team going to be for 2020, 2021? We're still waiting to see when the 2020 season is going to kick off or tip off, if you will. There have been talks about December 22nd, trying to get started before Christmas Day. The NBA always had a full slate of basketball games on Christmas Day. But, that's a month and a half. That's about a month and a half, maybe away from a little bit more, a month and 3 weeks away from now. And they haven't started training camp. They've got to figure out what the plan is. I remember the NBA said at the end of the bubble, while the bubble was wildly successful in terms of being able to complete the games, get through the championship, and not have outbreaks of COVID. They didn't want to get back when they got back in action. They really wanted to be able to not be in a bubble. They wanted to be able to have fans in the stands because that's such a big part of the game. And so that was the goal. Well, of course, we haven't really not only have we not made progress in terms of eradicating COVID-19, now the numbers are on the rise again. It's surging around the country, and healthcare professionals, like the real ones, not the ones that are, politically driven, are saying this is about to be the most dangerous and deadly period we've seen during this pandemic. So a lot of unanswered questions about what's going to happen there. In fact, speaking of COVID-19 and league play, the NFL is considering a 16-team playoff. What can they do in terms of that? Maybe some sort of everyone has to, while they've managed COVID okay to this point, there haven't been tons of outbreaks, but how do they manage that going forward? Is it some sort of a bubble for a playoff? And then do you go to an extended playoff, the 16 team rather, that I mentioned? So a lot to see that a lot will be waiting to hear from over the next, few days, few weeks to see how this thing is going to shake out. So those are some of the things happening league-wide. The Houston Texans were off this week. It was their bye week. no major moves from the organization. And they're back in action on Sunday. They're on the road for the next 2 weeks. They are going to play the Jaguars this weekend, and then they go play Cleveland. So they're on the road the next 2 weeks. Hello, Alvin Wright. Good morning. Good morning. Alvin says he likes the idea of the 16-team playoff. I mean, it's interesting. We'll see how they're able to manage that. What they're able to come up with, if you will. And so that's what's really happening around the NFL. That's the thing that I'm really watching. And let me ask you guys something. It's not a Houston question, but it is an NFL question. So Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens went into played Pittsburgh last weekend, pretty much controlled the first half of the game, and in the second half were just blown away, right? I say blown away. Pittsburgh won that game. Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh is the only undefeated team remaining in the National Football League. So the question this week has been, why is it that Lamar Jackson doesn't win in big games? Is it fair criticism of him? He's like 21-1 against everybody else and 0-6 and against the best teams in the league. And so what do you think about that? I don't know. I mean, it's fair criticism. I mean, he was the league MVP, and we know he's very talented. But what is it about the big games? And if you can't win those, that is going to be a criticism. So we'll, continue to watch that and see how it shakes out. Alvin says, "What will a 2021 Super Bowl look like for fans?" I have no idea, because a huge part of the Super Bowl is the fans. It's the experience. It's all the people converging on the Super Bowl city and all of the events surrounding it. I think it's safe to say that the first weekend in February, we are not going to be in a position to encourage 100,000 people to go to a city for an event. I just think it is. I think it is. But that's it. This COVID has turned everything upside down. And those are all the kinds of questions that teams and leagues rather are going to have to answer. Albert, I'm guessing you're talking about play calling for Lamar Jackson. Yeah, I think that you have to let him be who he is. I mean, that one interception he had could have really changed the momentum and everything of that game on Sunday. But he hasn't looked like the Lamar Jackson we saw in 2019 when he was the league MVP, right? He hasn't looked like it. He has been, I mean, you obviously have to respect him, but I think after the game, what the Steeler coach said was, we respect the Ravens, but we don't fear them. So people used to, I mean, no one's going to say we fear Lamar Jackson, but they respected him, and they had to really, really plan for him. And in that game, the Ravens had over 200 yards of rushing. So if somebody told you they had a 10-point lead, right? They had over 200 yards. It may have been 250, but definitely over 200 yards rushing, and that they would lose that game, you'd probably be pretty surprised. So hello, Jackie Howard. Good morning. Thank you very much, Aunt Jackie in Lafayette, who had to, of course, recently survive yet another hurricane. For those who don't think climate change is a real thing. Freddie says, NBA players don't want to lose the money by not starting by December 22nd, but they also have the majority in the CBA, can't have it all. You're right. You're right. When it comes down to it, they don't want to lose the money. Not just the players, but the league as well. And it's been the league who said, hey, we want to come back and have our fans play. So we'll see what happens. Not much of an off season for NBA teams. And as they try to get back to some sort of schedule, getting closer to being able to get back on schedule, get back on track, because if they start in December, maybe they can end the season. Is it a shortened season? Is it, instead of 82 games, is it 72 games? And then you still try to end about the same time, so you have a full off season next year. There's so many questions that the league has to answer. But if there is any league I trust with making those decisions and answering those questions, it is the NBA, because they've shown us that they think on a different level, quite frankly. So good morning, Jay. Welcome to Chalk Talk. Thank you for being a part of the show. So For all of you baseball fans, Astro fans, and those will only be those of you who are listening in Houston, because clearly people around the country still are harboring a lot of resentment about the Houston Astros for the cheating scandal. And let me just say this: I don't condone the cheating. I just am surprised that it took on, they received the amount of, the team received the amount of, hate that they did. And especially because, and not because you're not the only ones, but they weren't. No one talks about the Red Sox who had their own cheating scandal in 2018. There's no talk about it. And I always say it goes back to some of that East Coast bias. I'm just saying, okay? Yes, I'm a Houstonian. Yes, I want to see the Astros do well. Perhaps I'm a wee bit biased, but you guys, if you follow my work, I will call it like I see it, even teams in my home city. And I just think the Astros have taken a whole lot of extra heat. But speaking of the Astros, they did extend a qualifying offer yesterday to George Springer. I don't know what that offer was. I imagine it will fall short. But hang on. I imagine it will fall short of being able to keep him, just because teams lost so much money last year. He's a free agent, and he deserves a big payday. I mean, his entire career from when he came into the league in the minors has been with the Astros. He has progressed. He has exceeded what I'm sure people thought he would be able to do and achieve and accomplish. And now it's time for him to go get his payday. So unfortunately, we might not see George Springer in an Astros uniform anymore. But again, there's so much we don't know. We saw the numbers they talked about, what, $1.5 to $2 billion that Major League Baseball lost this past year. When you talk about fans and parking and concessions and the number of games, all of that stuff, it is it's a lot. And when it comes to the bottom line, teams took a hit. It's tough to then, when you already have a high payroll, it's tough then to be able to write those big checks. I mean, they paid Justin Verlander. Was it 2 seasons ago? They paid Alex Bregman. They paid Jose Altuve. I mean, it's going to be more difficult to, they've got to get some revenue back in. It is still a business, so we will see. They all cheat. The Astros got outed by a former player running off with the rock. You're right, they do. And I mean, I've had that conversation with people, and I will say I've had it with people in baseball who, and anonymously, people in the upper levels of baseball. Like, this is not something that's like, oh my gosh, how they did this. But the Astros got caught, and like the part of it too is the Boston Red Sox, the revelation or the findings or the report about the Boston Red Sox came out right at the beginning of the pandemic, so it wasn't dealt with. I don't think they shouldn't receive some smoke for it. I mean, if this cheating thing's so bad, then it should be bad for whoever cheats. But, speaking of the World Series, there is a new World Series champion, the Los Angeles Dodgers. I was glad for the manager, Dave Rogers, because I knew that he was getting some heat about not winning and about some calls being made. And so the expectations have been so high for them. I was pulling for the Rays, but I was good with the Dodgers winning, and I had a friend say, well, they just won recently. I'm like, no, they haven't won since the 80s. So congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers and all my LA Dodgers fans. I know there are many of you here, Dodgers fans, Laker fans. So all of that. Jay says other teams cheat. Other cities hate Houston teams a lot. From Jackie Jones. Oh, Texas A&M. Gig 'em, huh? How about that? Good to see you. Thank you for being a part of Chalk Talk. Yeah, there is a lot of hate, and I was so surprised because this Astros team, let me tell you, they're really a group of likable guys. They really are, And so what I've noticed is people around the country, while they say, we hate Houston, but they do like Dusty Baker a lot. So I'm glad that Dusty's coming back. I'd like to see Dusty get a championship. It'd be great for Houston. Houston has a championship. That's what you play for. I'd really like to see Dusty get a championship. So, he's getting a little bit of rest, but it won't be long because before you know it, we'll be talking about baseball players getting ready for camp, pitchers and catchers reporting in like February. Wow, how time flies. So at any rate, let me say this. We're going to talk a little bit about the election and voting, but if you have not voted yet and you are a registered voter, wherever you are in the country, please go vote. You got to vote, right? It's not an option. It's not about holding on to your vote. And if there are things, and we talk about it. So today the goal is to go vote. We talk about election on this show and community and social issues throughout the entire season. Hey, good morning, Sylvia. That's my sister, Sylvia. She's busy working on the election. My oldest sister is working as a poll worker this year. When I finish with Chalk Talk, I've got to get a proposal done, and then I'm going to be out in these election streets, letting you know what's happening, passing out water to people, seeing where I can be helpful, and just keeping an eye on what is going on. So I got to remind you, vote. Right? Make sure you vote and have a plan when you vote. If you've got to take a chair, take some snacks. The weather, depending on what part of the country you're in, if you're in Houston, the weather's pretty good. It will heat up, but you got to vote. It's just not an option. So go vote, go vote, go vote. Alvin says the Astros need pitching. Absolutely. If you think about what the Astros did in the postseason, how they had guys who had never even played in a big league game having to come up, making starts, coming out of the bullpen. I mean, they had some guys grow up pretty quickly, but they need some pitching. There's no question about it. Get Morgan back. Yeah. Oh, you're talking about Charlie Morton. Yeah, he pitched that last game when the Astros, was it game 6 that the Astros lost, or no, game 7. Charlie Morton's a real deal. He was a factor. An integral part of them winning the World Series in 2017. So it would be good to get him back. And yes, the mantra is vote, vote, vote. It is not an option. And you know what? After the election's over, we're going to immediately start talking about what's the strategy? What should we be doing? What kind of agenda should we push? What should we be doing? This is only the beginning. And I say this throughout the entire year. Voting is the beginning of the engagement. It's the beginning. And so we have to keep this level of excitement and enthusiasm and passion and concern, whatever the word is for you. Hopefully, it won't be chaos and fear. Okay. Hopefully, we will move to a place where chaos and fear is not driving things. But we can really talk about a real agenda and a real strategy. If in your area, if your thing's education, how do you work with the school board? Maybe you should run for the school board. How do you show up for the school board and talk about what's on the agenda, what they're doing in your area? That's if school board is your thing. Maybe yours is health equity. Find an organization, one of the advocacy organizations, whether it's the American Diabetes Association or Sickle Cell or whatever it is that speaks to you, that you say, a lot of things matter to me, right? Because more than one thing can matter, and it should. But here's where I want to pitch my fork. Here's where I want to make a difference. And so I'm encouraging you to find something that you want to be a part of moving forward. That's what we have to do, right? We can't just show up every 4 years or every 8 years and then be mad when people don't take us seriously, So let me say this also. I have to say this. When you don't vote, and I'm not going to say this right, but when you don't vote and then your area doesn't vote, they don't pay as much attention to you, right? They don't. They're dealing with constituents that show up. That's really across the board. Yes, politicians, it's not about not serving communities or constituents that don't vote for you. Even if the person you vote for doesn't win, the fact that you are active, those are the areas that they pay attention to. And I know we've had a lot of conversation throughout this election season, and we've talked about Black women, and the power of Black women and being the base of really the Democratic Party. And I'm not saying that you should be a part of a party. I think you should vote your conscience. But that while that is true, and the other thing I want to say, let me say this right quick too. So what I think we should be careful about doing is, um, let's say you support Joe Biden. There are some black men who've come out in support of Donald Trump, but that is not the majority. Black men overwhelmingly are supporting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Don't be distracted. And of all things, don't let outside people create this noise between black women and black men. We can't be productive like that, right? We got to be supportive. I'm not saying you got to invite what's Lil Wayne over to dinner. I wouldn't invite him to dinner. I don't care who he voted for, right? Like he's not somebody I would roll with. But let's not do the generalizations about black men, because black men, they're voting, they're doing their part, and they're not breaking for Donald Trump in large numbers. There will be some who do. That is their absolute right. But let's not get into a us versus them. We as a people cannot afford that. That's my little commercial about that. So it is about, you're absolutely right, Alvin. It is about holding elected officials accountable, which means you got to vote in every election. You got to vote up and down the complete ballot, right? You guys know I live in Houston. I live in Harris County. And so, we have Chris Collins, who's been seen around the country, the interim election official here locally, who's done some really creative things, legal, to, get people to the polls and get them voting. The drive-up locations, I'm going to run a story about that. That became an issue late, not at the beginning. It wasn't challenged early. It went to court right before, on the eve of election is when they're still trying to say, throw out 127,000 votes. I'm one of those people that voted at a drive-through location. Why wouldn't I? We had 24-hour polling locations, and then 3 nights all of the early voting locations were open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I mean, they have done as much as they could to make it easy and accessible for as many people to vote as possible. And it's unfortunate that this is partisan, that the Republican Party would want to limit votes and access. It's called voter suppression, which is why the Civil Rights Bill is so important. The Voting Rights Act is so important to win, because you think you might lose. It should be run the best campaign, do the right work, and take your case to the voters. But I digress. So we got to hold them accountable. We can't just show up when it's dire straits and an emergency, right? I am glad that people are showing up and showing out. And if you haven't voted, you got all day. Get there some kind of way. You got to vote. Get in line. If you are in line before 7 o'clock, you will get to vote. So I'm going to encourage you to vote. But then after that, you've got to vote in the city elections. You've got to vote in the state elections. Here in Texas, we've got a gubernatorial election coming up next year. I've been talking about it all. Who's going to run, right? Because our leadership at the governor, from the governor's office has not been good during COVID. So we need a different mindset of leadership from governor and lieutenant governor and a lot of the seats. The Texas State House might flip, which is important because they're going to be redrawing the congressional lines based on this census, which they won't change for 10 years. So voting every election is important. Vote in your city elections. Who are your council members? Who are your county commissioners, right? Who's the railroad here? We have a railroad commission here. I mean, there's all kinds of offices. We have to stay engaged. We need this level of passion and energy all the time so that then, as Alvin said, we are in a position to hold election officials accountable. Yes, make some noise. Your community needs you. I say do this for not the Democratic Party, or whatever party you want to be affiliated with. Do it for you and your family. Do it for your community, right? Do it because you deserve the right to have a voice and to have a say. And if you do not vote, you end up forfeiting a lot of that. They don't know what you mean unless you're seen. Look at you with all the little catchy phrases this morning, Alvin, right? Yeah. You got to let people know what you mean. You've got to say, hey, these things matter to me, and I'm showing up, and what you going to do about it, right? You guys campaigned and you told me these things would happen. Okay, now let's talk about how we get to some of that, right? Don't wait till the next primary. Don't wait till the next election season. As soon as this election is over, start talking about the agenda and start talking about the plan. It's kind of like not buying sports tickets if the team is not putting a good product on the field. Yeah. And I don't know if you mean that by not buying the sport. I know you're right. I know you're right. So I'm guessing you're saying not buying a sports ticket. So don't vote for the politicians who aren't doing what they're supposed to, but vote for somebody. The people who are in office, if they are not serving the way that you think they should, if they're not doing the kind of job for you and your community and your family that you expect or that you want, vote them out. That's the power of this thing, man. This vote thing matters, and it does count. And I always say this, I didn't make it up. I did not. If your vote was not so important, they would not be trying so hard to keep you from voting, right? They just wouldn't. If they spent the energy and effort on making policy changes that impacted all of us instead of fighting so that we don't get to vote and have a say, that's about control. That's not about, legislating. It's about control. And so that's a whole nother show. That's a whole nother show. I know, right, Alvin? So I'm going to tell you about voting. And listen, I know people that I talk to in this state that like, well, it doesn't matter. I shouldn't vote. Texas is a red state, and what I do because of the Electoral College doesn't matter. So Texas is in play, right? We've seen that. We've seen the numbers. The Senate race, unfortunately, it looks like, and I will say this, because I have reached out to our senators, and John Cornyn has not done a great job. At least when I send him letters at his office or call him, I get the obligatory, form letter back. When I reach out to Ted Cruz, I get nothing. He don't even care. He's not even sending you a form letter because although they're not my choices, they are my senators. And so really they work for us, right? Like I'm always writing saying, I want the kind of healthcare you got. How do I get that? How do I get the healthcare you have? At a price that's probably what you pay. How does that work? Like, don't talk to me about healthcare when you have it and I can't get what you have. So, because you work for the people. I'm the people. Anyway, you guys know how I feel about that. And so I really do. Charles says, that's right. Let's win. And let's have a strategy, man. I was talking to somebody the other day about a strategy. Listen, a strategy for, this whole process of politics. It's not just because I cover sports, but you got to have a strategy in everything. Listen, I have to have a strategy in my business. I even have to have a strategy in this whole covering sports thing. There's a strategy I have to employ, just because as much as the talk from some of these leagues about, now we're into Black Lives Matter and we're going to take a knee and, power to the people. That's not how they really move it. And so just keep listening and I'll tell you more about it. But it forces me to have a strategy because, I'm a voice they don't want heard. And so why is that? Right? Why is that? Because, I'm not like this crazy, super radical person, but if you're doing the things you should be doing, and I ask questions in a professional manner, as you guys know that I will and do, what's the problem? So the answer becomes, okay, we're going to find a way to limit your access, which I think I told you guys earlier this year after training camp that I expected that, and that has happened. And now they're taking it even a step further. So it is a lot we always have to have a strategy, and you can say, well, we shouldn't have, I don't know what we should and shouldn't have to, but, I will say it is what it is, right? We have to be strategic in our thinking all of the the eyes have been on Texas throughout this election season because the numbers have been really, really big, right? The numbers have been, Texas has not done great in the past in terms of voter turnout, not so much this year. Early voting numbers were through the roof. and expect the voting numbers today to be really through. Somebody said earlier, I think it was Jay that said, get your 18-year-old people out to vote. That's right. I listen to Sirius XM radio a lot, particularly Urban View. And, I've heard people call up a young woman yesterday from Baltimore. I think she's 18, and she was so passionate about her first time voting and things that she didn't like and stuff that she sees. And I'm like, that's it. These young people are going to save us, right? But getting them to vote, getting them to show up and vote. They're not teaching them civics and social studies and government in schools anymore. So we've got to make sure that they learn it, right? We've got to make sure that they learn it. I love that idea. Carolyn says, Kim, we should encourage everyone to write letters about healthcare. If enough people express concern, they might get it. So the reason stuff happens is because they hear from us. Like we have to, and not just one time, we have to over and over again say, hey, this is what we want. This is what we need. This is not okay. They've stacked the courts. Yes, that is one of the reasons that Amy Coney Barrett was rushed through the process to be named to the Supreme Court right before an election. Because they know she's there for an agenda. Like she's there to represent Donald Trump. And she will. There's no question about it. I don't want to, I'm really big on moving forward, but I just got to go back to 2016. I was screaming to people, it is about the courts. It is about the courts. The things we want to see happen. We want to see justice for Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and, Tamir Rice and Eric, all of the people who have been unjustly and unduly shot, killed by police, right? Or shot and killed by, racist vigilantes, like the kid from Wisconsin that went to Kenosha. Those things happen in the court. Judges are elected, and the federal judges and many Supreme Court judges, as we've seen, many of them are elected and others are appointed, and many of them are appointed for a lifetime. So these three people that this current president has put on the court will be there for a lifetime, a generation, and what I encourage you to do is understand the process. Don't, people ask Joe Biden, they want him, who's not even in office, to explain more about what he thinks than they ask the man who's in office. You're going to do court packing. It's not called court packing, but we absolutely need court reform. We need court reform, which to me looks like expanding the Supreme Court. And to me, it also looks like limiting terms. I just don't think there's any reason anymore to have a judge on the court for a lifetime. They can have a long term, but I think they should not be appointed for a lifetime. That's not working anymore. Because the country's changing and the court is not changing, it doesn't reflect that. That is about control, and that is about power. And that is about, unfortunately, many people concerned about whiteness not being the majority. And that's just the reality of where we are, what we live in, Learn how to play well with others, right? So you're right. Charles says, let's have a global strategy that incorporates our politics. And that's what it's about. What's a global strategy, right? What is the global strategy? We have to have a strategy in order to be effective and impactful and to make a difference. We can't just be mad. We have to use that anger and do something with it. And that's one of the reasons I think you're seeing so many people, so many first-time voters. And a lot of them are young people who haven't voted before. And we've heard some athletes say, hey, I'm in my 40s, I've never voted before. And we could say, well, that's crazy. But what I say is, well, welcome to the party. And stay. Don't be one and done, right? Continue to vote. We've gotten you engaged now. If it was George Floyd that got you engaged, whatever it was, join the movement, get with some people, learn the process, do the work, find out where you can be helpful. I mean, back in the day, before my time, of course, with Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte, they funded movements. They didn't just get up and say, I'm a superstar and this is what I think. They did the work, and that's it. Let's find ways to do the work. So I'm excited that you guys are here. I know most of you, all of you, I'm imagining that, especially the regular people who are part of Chalk Talk, I know y'all voted. because we talk about voting all throughout the year. We didn't wait till election season. We didn't wait till the primary. We've been talking about it since 2016 and before. So I will continue to talk about it. Today, I'm going to talk about voting. And then after today, we got to get together on a strategy and an agenda, right? And we need to have platforms where we talk about it and we get the message to people. So I encourage you guys, first of all, thank you for always being here for Chalk Talk. I appreciate that. And I encourage you to help me to continue to spread the message about the show. I was on a panel last week and they said, well, how can we help what you do? Share the show and encourage other people to join the tribe, to be a part of this Chalk Talk community, because we have to have places where we can speak truth to power. We have to have places where people are telling us the truth and they're operating with integrity and not being controlled by an editorial process that may not be beneficial to them and their community. And so that's one of the things that that's one of the things I know that is, I got a question. It's like, well, we really limiting access to people who don't have an editorial process. I have an editorial process. I'm just the one who determines the process, right? I know what that meant. There's not anybody we can call and make you not say something and make you not ask a question. I get it. I absolutely know what that is. But I have a strategy and you guys will all be a part of it. So make sure that you vote. And I want to run this story that ran on channel, a local station here, a NBC station here earlier today, because I think it's really important to show, people around the country have been watching Texas. Like, could Texas flip? Could it turn blue? We saw last weekend, Biden bus headed to the Austin area for a campaign event, and a bunch of Trump supporters and trucks and flags and all that kind of stuff surrounding the bus and trying to nudge it off the road. What I later found out, of course, the president in a rally said, and don't worry, I'm not going to make you hear from him, because he triggers me, so I don't really listen to him much. That's important. You got to know your triggers. And so I don't listen to him much. I get the information I need. I know what's happening. I read things to myself, but I don't spend a lot of time listening to that chaos. And he said those were patriots or something crazy. But as people have been looking at this state saying, wow, Texas really could be in play. Texas hasn't, what is it, 1944? Texas had a Democratic governor, and the last time was Ann Richards. Remember that? Now, I remember that's in my lifetime. But it is about the will of the people, and it is about all the people, not just a few of the people. So I'm excited about this election process. I'm excited that the Texas State House could flip. I'm excited that the U.S. Senate could could change, because clearly now here's what I will say that's partisan. Republicans have been in place and they've done nothing for us, right? They failed us as a people. And as far as healthcare, it's been 10 years since they, put the squash on the Affordable Care Act, and just because it bore the name of Barack Obama, and because Barack Obama is the one who moved that forward, and they still don't have a plan. So you lose your right to talk about the plan if in 10 years you haven't figured out how to have one, which means a few things. You never had one or intended to. You just don't want me to have it. I have a problem with that. So, and you should have a problem with it too. If you're fortunate enough to have, if you work on a job and you have private insurance through your job, good for you. But care about the people who don't, the business owners, the people who have who work part-time jobs, who work hourly jobs, where they're fighting to increase minimum wage, right? People are making minimum wage is what, $7? What is it, $7, $8 an hour? I don't know, but minimum wage is what that $600 a week would have been, which is not a ton of money. So there's a lot of things we have to work on, and because you may be doing okay, it's not okay that other people are not. We've got to get people to a living wage, and $15 an hour is not breaking the bank. We got to pay people a living wage so that they can support their families. so that they can have some quality of life, because we're all a part of this ecosystem. Down to money and power. It is about money and power, especially about power. It is really about money and power, and it is about access to it. So if you haven't voted, get up. If you thought, man, I don't want to vote. If you're registered, if you're not registered, then get registered now for the future, because we're not done, right? We're not done. If you're in Georgia, I know I have a few people in Atlanta that watch the show. Man, y'all better get to the polls and flip those Senate seats. Get that, crazy lady, what's her name? Locklear. Get her out of office, man. She's what she's doing is criminal. She's Black Lives Matter, a terrorist movement. Man, lady, are you crazy? And COVID's not a big deal. The president's done a great job. No, what he did was give y'all a tip, and you were able to trade some stocks and make some money on it. Yeah, they gotta go. And then the other dude, the other guy, Perdue, who's running against Ossoff. I mean, it's just everywhere there's a possibility, there's an opportunity for change, and so I just say we have to continue to support, be vigilant, and pay attention. And you know what I say to you guys, get the information for yourself. Now, this whole thing about drive-through voting and what it came down to locally, and like I said, I paid close attention. I would have paid close attention anyway, but especially because I was one of those drive-through voters. Like, I went through a drive-through location. So I'm like, because my vote has got to be counted. So do I have to get back in line today? I didn't want any problems with them saying, you're going to jail because you voted twice. So how is this going to work? So I was really glad when they said yesterday they were throwing the case out, and the 127,000 early votes that came from drive-through voting locations were going to be counted. And so they decided to close. There were 10 locations. They closed all but one. And I want to share that story with you. Hey, Bobby Scott, you're right. Vote. Let me share this story with you.
The open up across southeast Texas in less than a half hour. Voters in Harris County, though, only have one drive-through location this time.
Yeah, the county clerk announced the decision late last night. Channel 2's Kathy Hernandez outside Toyota Center this morning. What is behind that big change? Kathy.
Good morning to you. Another 20,000 people were expected to use drive-through voting locations on Election Day, but right now they need to know there is only one drive-through location, and it is here at the Toyota Center. As you can see, drivers will go into that entrance there and vote on the third level before coming back out. We actually have seen voters arrive already. The county clerk says it's a way to protect the voters.
We're expecting a smooth day tomorrow. We look forward to making sure that voters can cast their votes safely and conveniently, and with the peace of mind that their votes are going to be counted.
And that's why the county clerk announced a big change for Election Day. Instead of 10 drive-through voting locations, there will only be one, and it'll be at the Toyota Center. A federal judge ruled the tents used are not qualified as buildings, which is required for Election Day. County Clerk Chris Hollins tweeted, "I cannot in good faith encourage voters to cast their votes in tents if that puts their votes at risk." He continues to say the Toyota Center drive-through voting site fits the judge's definition of a building. The same judge rejected an effort yesterday to invalidate nearly 127,000 early votes because the ballots were cast at drive-through polling centers. The lawsuit was brought by conservative Texas activists claiming they were illegal. But their fight is not over.
We're asked the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, maybe even the United States Supreme Court, to grant us the relief that we're requesting.
If the past has shown us anything, it means that they're going to be relentless in doing their best to suppress votes here in Texas.
And so that is, he's right? And again, why don't you want as many people to vote as possible? It was, it seemed, and why did you wait till right before the election day? At any rate, so if you are in Houston, there's one location where you can drive through the Toyota Center, because it does have a building, it does have it has a roof, it has walls, so it meets the structural requirements. And I thought it was smart of the county clerk to close the other location, so there's no chance of people's votes not counting. They're going to still fight it, but I think they're, they'll be relentless. Jared Woodfield, who has been that person forever, no real support about supporting people, COVID relief, dealing with COVID, really having mandates around the state as we're on this surge, but y'all want to spend your time trying to keep people from voting. That's some madness. Bobby is right. It's blatant voter suppression. So here's the thing. I encourage you, if you have not voted, to get out and vote. If you haven't heard it anywhere else, let me say it now. Your vote matters. You matter. Your vote counts. You count. Make sure that you get out and vote. I am going to get out and move around in these streets. I got to get some other work done before I do that. Check on my mom. Thanks for all of you who've been sending prayers and asking how she's doing. She's recovering from her surgery. Had a little scare early this morning, but she's good. And so continue to keep her in your prayers, if you will. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'm going to move around and keep you guys posted on what's happening. So make sure you follow me here on Facebook and follow me on Instagram. I'm at kim.y.davis. I haven't said this all day, but please do share the video so that people can see it. Uh-oh. I don't know what I just did, but that was not the right thing. I was trying to write a message, but it didn't let me. So if you will share the video so that people can see the replay, and follow me on Twitter, Kim Y. Davis. I'll be out posting stuff and maybe dropping off water, making sure there's no shenanigans going out, so I can, call the NAACP number, the national vote number. We'll just have to do that, but be safe. Limit your movements. I'm not going to do anything crazy and dangerous, but I do want to get out and make sure that I'm a part of the process. So with that said, and I need to listen, we do have a lawyer on the show. I need to make sure that I talk to Mr. What's going on with my comments? So the computer's being weird. Let me make sure. Hold on one second. I'm going to make sure that we are still. There we go. Charles. Okay. I wanted to make sure that I could see you guys, and let me say this. There we go. Technology. Please share the video. I encourage you to do that. But follow me on Twitter, Kim Y. Davis. Follow me on Instagram, kim.y.davis. And be safe. If you are moving around, if you are out and about, just make wise choices, right? They expect foolishness, some people to be out and about, and they're building walls and boarding up buildings in a lot of cities. And I said this to someone yesterday, probably my family. So we know that if Biden does not win, there'd be a lot of people very disappointed, but they're not going to be tearing down stuff. I just don't think it's going to be the chaos. Now, if Trump doesn't win, clearly his people, because he's been telling them, to go to the polls with guns in Michigan and stand by and stand back and all of that. But the vote should be decided by the people. I feel confident that it will be. And, people say, what happens if he doesn't leave, if he loses? He'll leave. They will get him out. This is some chaos and foolishness, but they're not just sitting idly by with no plan. I believe that. So be encouraged, everybody. And we have great weather in Houston. Other parts of the country, the weather is chilly. It's not so great. You still got to get out there and do your part. Make sure that you vote, and then sit down with friends or family or with whatever kind of whatever organizations you are a part of. If you're part of a sorority or any sort of advocacy groups, make sure that you do that, right? And start working on your agenda. Start working on what the strategy is, because we have to have a plan. Charles is right. One way or another, he will go. And so I'm encouraged, and I look forward to it. And I will see you guys next Tuesday on Chalk Talk, but I'll see you before that here on Facebook and YouTube. Also, I will see you on my Twitter and Instagram pages. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe, make wise choices, and make sure that you have a strategy for voting if you're going out to vote. Just a plan. And hey, you're so welcome, Sylvia. Make sure that you have a plan and a strategy, and check on people. All right. And if you're out someplace and you see some shenanigans, there are numbers you can call. There's an 800 vote number that you can call. There are people, there are lawyers all around the country who are prepared to fight for your right to vote, and to vote safely, and to vote without being intimidated. So, and I will thank you, Carol, and I will stay safe. I'm not Superwoman, I'm clear about that, but y'all have a great day, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for being a part of Chalk Talk. Make sure you share the video. Have a great